We're doing it live.
We're live. We got Ollie Leonard. Oh, goodness.
Woo! What a group. Welcome to Amped Up. I am Cliff Schechter. Indeed, next to, I can't tell which side any of you are on. So David Schuster, as always, is here as the co-host, the Emmy-winning co-host that David is. Haha, you couldn't cut me off there, David, because
you haven't introduced Ollie Leonard yet, so I didn't want to.
That's it. You see, I tricked you. So
I was trying to see if I had any awards, and all I can find is this guy. So
the thing is, David usually tries. Ooh, that guy's nice. Tries to talk over me because he doesn't. He's humble and doesn't want me announcing his Emmy. But I do it all the time and try to bust through. And this time, he had to wait till I introduced, as she referred to herself in her recent piece for Blue Amp, the Epstein girl.
No, I did not.
you said that you're known as the Epstein girl. You said you didn't want to be.
Yeah.
But we know.
And it is, I got to say, Cliff, it is fortuitous of us that we have Ollie Leonard on today, because the latest news that I've seen that this struck me as interesting. And Ellie, I'm dying to ask you about this. So local officials in New Mexico are now investigating, searching the Santa Fe ranch that apparently the feds never looked at, or that they apparently started to look at in 2019. And then James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Republican, said that in 2019, the Trump Justice Department told people to back off the New Mexico Santa Fe ranch. So as somebody who was...
Comer admitted that?
Yeah, that the Justice Department told people to back off. So as somebody, Ellie, who knows more about this stuff and more steeped in the files than any of us, what do you make of it, and put it in some context for us?
Well, unless we see some real information coming out of this ranch, I kind of feel like what they're doing right now is a little bit for show. Like they're sort of like moving dirt around to say, hey, look at us, we're investigating. Because I mean, like what has it been, 30 years? We have this tranche of emails that has come out that in these emails, some of the first ones that I was reading through were all the FBI investigations. So you actually get to read emails in between FBI agents as the case is taking place. So like before Epstein's dead, during, after, kind of their reactions to everything. And when they're talking about doing these raids and going into these different properties that he has, they consistently say, but let's put Zorro Ranch last, or let's not worry about that one. We're being told not to worry about it. And part of that, I have to believe, is because the governor of New Mexico was very good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was very involved with this case. He was mentioned in Virginia Giuffre's book.
We're talking about Bill Richardson at this point?
Yes. And he's in charge of the law enforcement. Now he's dead now, but like that mattered at the time. And then since then, the guy that bought the ranch is this Texas politician whose son works in the White House. And so he, the whole time has been very resistant to do any kind of an investigation on the property, except for once we found out who he was, because originally he did the rich man thing. He bought the house with an LLC. He didn't buy it under his name. They renamed the roads around the property, and when they did that, they had to kind of like change the taxes up. And in so doing, they outed who the person was who owned this property. And when everybody found that out, they said, why are you not letting anybody investigate? And there were reports that he was resistant to that. And then as soon as people started yelling, he goes, oh, I'm going to let you guys come investigate, and all the money we raise for this property we're going to give to sexual abuse foundations. And and he's going to put a summer camp on there for like a young Christian kids summer camp. And I just thought that's kind of creepy.
That's gross. That's like it feels like a poltergeist type thing to do. Like,
right, don't put a kids camp on Zorro. Like,
ew.
There are victims who say that they were trafficked at the Zorro Ranch in Santa Fe, right?
Annie Farmer was trafficked to Santa Fe. So it's something that they need to do a thorough investigation. Like they need to have like cadaver dogs just running the property, because it's 8,000 acres. It's his biggest property. Annie was brought down there under the guise of it being like a pre-college student weekend, that she was going down there and there was going to be a whole bunch of students and they were going to prep them for college and help them make connections. And she showed up and she was the only one there. And when she was abused and she came home and told her sister, Maria, who had already been abused but was an adult, that is why Maria filed the FBI report, is because she found out her sister had been abused, and she said that she wasn't going to sit back.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did it come out? I thought I read that in one of the Epstein documents or files that came out that Jeffrey Epstein had, I guess, ahead of the FBI investigations or ahead of him being arrested, he had private investigators or private workers for him take a lot of his documents and disks and spread them out. And so possibly and put them at storage facilities and at some of his other properties. Any possibility that Zorro Ranch was the repository of some of this stuff?
I mean, that would be stupid if that was true. I'd hope he'd be smarter than that, because that's his property. I would think you wouldn't hide things on your other properties, but I don't know. That could be. I do know that is true, though, that he, multiple computer towers were missing and empty file cabinets. They were definitely tipped off, especially with the Palm Beach house, but also the New York mansion. He was definitely tipped off days in advance. The people to talk to about that, who would know where everything is, would be Richard Kahn and Darren Indike, who are the executors of his estate. It's his accountant and his lawyer. And I think Richard Kahn is being deposed today or tomorrow. But they are the ones who are in charge of all of his private items, which there's a massive amount of things that we have not investigated that are not in the hands of the FBI. But they're also the ones who gave us the birthday book. They're also the ones who gave us all the Bannon emails and everything the first time around. So they have a lot of information. But again, with all of these people, if they release things that condemn themselves, and so they're hanging on to everything.
Wow. What did I want to ask you before? First of all, I would let David ask a few questions before I apologize for chuckling, which I feel like I shouldn't do when we're talking about items like this. But I did, because when you said, they're just moving dirt around, all I could think of was George W. Bush clearing the brush from the ranch, while we were being warned about 9/11, while they're like, guys coming to blow us up. And he's like, well, I got to clear some more brush on the ranch there. And right. So there's that obviously just terrible part of this story. But I wanted to sort of go further. I talked to you the other day, and obviously what we don't know. So let's just say, if these are just accusations, but we were talking about our old friend, Bill Barr, who we know.
Oh, Bill.
Yes. Tied to the Dalton School, much like Epstein. I like that was a rival school of mine when I was in New York. So it's it's fun to talk about them. But no, I mean, this is and awful and horrible. But also it seems there at least was a document I saw. So I could even find it and throw it on here that listed Barr as being present when abuse was taking place. Now, is this a legit document, or did somebody just? There's stuff redacted in this document. There's stuff, but you're like the pro at this, and I don't know.
Just to interject for people who are not sure, Bill Barr was the Attorney General who was the last government official to visit Jeffrey Epstein before he died, shall we say? Anyway,
yes. And so, trying to think of see if I've got it here.
If you've got it, send it to me, because I don't know if I've actually looked at it. But the key would be to do a term search in the Epstein DOJ library and see if it pops up.
Yes, that's a great point, and that is why stuff, and I don't know as much.
Not that everything in the files is 100% true, but if they kept it, that means something.
Right. The other thing I wanted to mention again, it's like you can't get away from this stuff, and you start. It's why I talk about the whole sort of predator mentality and the Republican Party and authoritarianism and everything. Because again, we bring up James Comer, and I think a lot of people either forget or don't know that his college girlfriend accused him of abusing her, and it never went anywhere. Of course, no case was ever brought against him. Like Jim Jordan, like every one of these other people, because magically they never get charged like the rest of us. But it is context worth that people should know. Like when Jim Jordan is in there banging the gavel, and James Comer on these types of things, oversight, whatever. That James Comer, I mean, again, if you believe what his ex-girlfriend said, didn't seem to be, legitimately at least accused him, and he never had any, except for I didn't do it. And these things seem to pop up a lot with Republicans, almost like a pattern, you could say. Go ahead.
I mean, the files themselves are bipartisan as far as people who are the abusers and who are showing up. There's a lot of politicians on all sides. There's a lot of like, you think of like the tech bros who were one time Democrats and now apparently aren't. But I think it's this idea of nonpartisan power that goes along with the money, that goes along with the social status, the black book. I was just talking to Marlon Weems, and he said when he used to work on Wall Street, he was a Wall Street guy. He said that he heard of a guy, he didn't hear a name, but he heard of a guy who had a black book who had information on everybody, you know, which lines up. This is something that they did and that they would have. And I think when you have people with that amount of power, I mean, it's cliche,
Right.
but you think of like Oprah,
Absolute
I don't know
power,
who,
right? Yeah, I mean,
like somebody trying to give a police ticket to a celebrity, and they're like, don't you know who I am? I'm a celebrity. You know, it's like that mentality of I've been given so much, I have so much, I'm so powerful, that the idea of harm towards something that is weaker or more vulnerable, you start to look at as a right versus
yeah, and I
there's a
think you lose
moral
empathy for
quandary.
start seeing people almost as numbers, as
Yeah.
these
And
things. And
and
I
it's
wasn't trying to say it was all Republicans.
no, but
I think that
I
the
think
mentality of
people,
authoritarianism fits with
right.
them, and why there's
I
more conservatives in there.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with money, which the Republican Party tends to lean into the idea of money and keeping more money and having more money, and the billionaire status tends to lean toward the Republican Party just because the Democrat Party is more like social endeavors based.
Right.
And so you do see it lean that way, but it's because it has more to do with these people. Like you even see Jeffrey Epstein, he was an ardent Democrat. He donated to the Democratic
So was
Party.
Donald Trump. Like in
So was
those
Donald
New
Trump.
York elite circles, you kind
Right.
of had to be in a lot of ways.
But you see them moving. You started to see them moving towards this Republican side because they realized that they got to play more. You know what I mean? They
Right.
they got to have more fun if I go over here. It might not be my politics, it might not be my morals, but that's not as important as what I get to do with my money. And they say that I get to do whatever I want with my money. So you would
Right.
see people kind of move, and that's why you see all these, tech CEOs have moved in that direction. And they were there on the inauguration day. So it's a lot of that. It has a lot more to do with money than people's like morals and ethics and believable, like their ability and to think about like fiscal responsibility. It had
Right.
nothing to do with that. It had to do with what's going to let me keep more money, have more power, have less accountability. Which side of the line do I get a step on in order to do that? And they all kind of like moved into one direction.
By the way,
Right.
this
So I just
document we're
wanted to
looking
hold
at-
on, David. I just wanted to put like this is the document, and then go ahead, David,
Okay.
and you
And
can.
I was just going to say the document that's on the screen, it looks like it's some sort of investigative summary because it lists
Yeah.
some of the associates or friends of Jeffrey Epstein. And then at the bottom, Cliff, to your point, William Barr, the former attorney general, blank stated was at Epstein's model for a model event, ran into Barr, stated he wanted to see her next time he came. At another point, Epstein asked if she'd ever met Barr. Blank claimed she was a victim of Epstein and that Barr was present during some of this abuse.
So that was what I was getting at, is not that even
Yeah.
that I've seen anything that says that he committed the abuse, but if he was
Yeah,
present
he was-
during abuse, that would be a crime and
Yeah.
and a horrific one. And so I didn't know. And again, look, you can't just look at this and know if this is
Yeah.
legit. But
Yeah, and it's in the
there are
files.
people-
It's in the files.
Any idea what NTOC stands for?
TOC. Let's look at
The
this.
very bottom where it says it's the second bullet point under William Barr. And then it's obvious it's got a victim's name redacted, claim she was a victim of Epstein.
Can we make it bigger? I know, Mr. Webb, I'm sorry that I know you can't read it that easily. If you can screenshot it from where
And
you
then there's
are.
another reference
blow it
to
up.
under Alexander Guest, 3
Yeah.
NTOC. I don't know what
I think it's
NTOC
national. If it means it said national for the FBI, it's a national threat operations center. I don't know if that was like
so
the
that's
location
signaling
where
where
she
the tip came
this
in
would
from.
Yeah, this would be a victim statement or a tip line. So,
Okay.
I don't know if it's valid. I don't know if it is, but it is very interesting because the idea of people standing by while this happened, I think is probably the majority of the people we're dealing with. There was a lot of
Right.
people who knew and said nothing, who were there and said nothing. Like when I talk about Michael Wolff and some of my quandaries that issues that I have with his journalistic standards, I'm not expecting that he was anywhere abusing children, but I think that people knew, assumed, and waved off the things that they knew about Epstein were happening. I mean, when you look in the very beginning, there's a quote from Wolf who says, I noticed there were all these tall girls around him on the airplane. This was 2000, and he mentioned something about teenage girls, and then continued to hang out with him for another 19 years. So, and you see in the emails, you see a lot of jokes about pedophilia and like how it's funny and how he has this reputation and it's so silly. I think people very often stood by and said nothing because he was a wealthy guy. The girls looked happy. It was fine.
Ellie, I got to ask you, one of the big story, I guess, a couple of weeks ago was when as part of the tranche of documents that were released, there was only, I guess, one FBI summary interview of, I think it was Jane Doe number 11, who said that when she was number four. So that said in the 1980s that Donald Trump forced her to do different things, and she bit down on him, and he punched her and whatnot. And that there was only one, and she gave 4 interviews, I guess, to the FBI, and only the summary of the first interview was released.
And the FBI always gives 4 interviews when they don't take things seriously.
Right. Yeah. And then talk about, and then over the last couple of weeks, the Department of Justice has sort of released some more of that stuff. Has it been a complete release? I mean, are there more? What are some of the outstanding questions, or what are some of the things that seem still to be withheld from these other FBI summaries and interviews that were done with Jane Doe number 4?
Right. So Cliff has a really good point that, you or I couldn't just like have an accusation and immediately get to sit down with the FBI. There are steps in between. So somebody found her credible enough to do that 4 times, and they're pretty significant interviews. I have spent the last 48 hours researching this, probably way more than I needed to, because it is
the story of your life.
Right. Yeah, but this is a case that is pre-internet, so it is difficult. It is microfiche. It is photocopies. It is clippings of newspapers on archive websites. Like, it's very difficult to validate a story like this. But if we're going to figure it out, we actually have to like follow it down. And so you have the story of a woman who lived. We figured out that was on Hilton Head Island, and then we found out that there was actually articles coming out of a newspaper called the Post and Courier that is out of Hilton Head, South Carolina. They have done, I have to say, one of the finest jobs in journalism that I have seen in a long time in their research. I reached out to one of the women who was writing, and she's like, I'm following you too. So we're like following each other.
It's incredible when you find out, like, from a local, like when it's a local paper like that. It's sort of
amazing.
Once in a while you see that and you're like, that almost brings back my faith a little bit in journalism.
Yes. I mean, they have done a really good job of speaking to people, finding clippings, going to their library, doing their archives. And so I've been trying to do that from home. And I have to say, outside of the specific thing that she's describing, all the details, there is accurate evidence of every single thing she's saying. And she's saying, I'm going to tell you this story. I have a criminal record. I'm going to put that up front so you know what my history is, so that doesn't affect the credibility of what I'm saying to you. But also, these are things that she brought forward because her friend, it was one of those cases where she told her friend years ago about this when she didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was. And her friend came back to her when he was all of a sudden in the news in 2019 and said, hey, I think this is the guy you're talking about. And she has these just really unique details. And one of them is she knew the guy's name was Jeff, but she remembered he looked like Lurch from the Addams Family. And that stuck in my head because I thought, yeah, he does kind of look like Lurch from the Addams Family. And her mother was a broker. She worked for a very, very small realtor because it was like a vacation rental complex. And it was owned by a guy from Ohio who was friends potentially.
Always Ohio, I swear.
Always Ohio, another education board member named Jim Atkins. And you had the mom, renting out rentals to these guys. And she tried to encourage her daughter to babysit. So they made flyers so that she could pass them out to the houses and get some babysitting jobs. And this guy answered that and ended up being Jeffrey Epstein and ended up abusing her. But there are so many details in this case that take a long time to track down. Like, I've been looking through yearbooks past couple of days, like scanning yearbook pages, finding siblings, seeing where the story lines up, that we're getting really close to being able to prove or disprove that this happened. Because if it did happen, that means that Jeffrey Epstein knew Donald Trump much earlier than he said he did, which again, we've seen that in other cases with like Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and Robert Maxwell, where we were
Right.
told
Ellie, just to stop you right there, how does
Yeah.
Donald Trump then fit into the
Sure.
Hilton Head connection, and where how does he enter into the picture of this?
So this was prior to what we think of with Jeffrey Epstein being this like old financial guy, house in Palm Beach. He didn't have any of that. He was working his way up, but he was about 30. And he was traveling to Hilton Head because that's sort of a hotbed for these wealthy meetings of financial investors come together, like the Wexners. And so it was just his MO. It was that typical MO. If he met the girl, he asked her to bring back more girls. He wasn't paying them back then, like he ended up paying them later, where he'd give them $200. He was just kind of like giving her drugs or whatever, which is a new thing, right? We don't think of Jeffrey Epstein doing drugs, or he wasn't doing them, but like offering drugs. That's a different thing to look into. But then eventually it kind of turned into that same thing that he did with the other girls and with Virginia Giuffre, is like he pulled them back and traveled up to New York, which this girl was originally from New York. So that could have been a reason for her to go back there, for her mother to let her to go back there. But again, she was from a pretty rough family. You know, it's not like what we might think of like your normal parent-child relationship.
Which just
but that
makes
was also-
those exploitation, situations that much worse because
Right.
you don't have that solid base that you can go to, you can trust. It's disheartening.
And there's just the thing that gets me with the story is the very finite details that she remembers. Like she remembers having some kind of a panic attack with a roommate, and the roommate was a male roommate. He remembered it too. He reiterated this to the FBI, but he was wearing some kind of cologne and it gave her a panic attack. Just the smell triggered her. And so she found out what kind of cologne it was, and it was called Gray Flannel. And Gray Flannel was a cologne from the early 1980s. And so it's likely that that would be what Jeffrey Epstein was wearing. She remembered he had a shirt that they called a cardboard shirt because it like crinkled. And it was this Tyvek material that people wore, these weird, crinkly 1980s shirts. And she remembered that her mother bought a house in 1981 for $55,000 on the island. I can go find the deed for that house. It has her mother's name on it. There's all these really just specific things where I'm like, I'm able to prove that all these things are true. So now we need to figure out if the main bulk of the story is true itself. And that's kind of what we're working on, seeing if there are any kind of logs or, because everything was on paper. There was no internet. And just seeing if there's any
the idea is that if she's credible on these other sort of details, and she's credible in what she remembers about Jeffrey Epstein, about South Carolina, and coming to New York, then the idea is, well, then why would she be making things up about Donald Trump and her interactions about him, and this whole sort of incident where she bit him and he hit her and whatnot?
Right. And she didn't even tell the FBI about Donald Trump. Her friend actually approached them about it. She said, this is what she told me, because she didn't want to. That's the other thing, is when you look at witnesses who don't want to say stuff, they're resistant to say stuff. That says something, because you're like, if somebody comes in and they want to completely lie, they're just going to be excited to do it and blah, blah, blah. Here's the whole story. She was very hesitant. She stopped the interview multiple times. That's why there's four of them.
Right? Like most people would want to do that. I don't mean to interrupt, but like they would, who would want to do this? There's a certain small percentage of people that would do these kinds of things because any fame is good fame to them because they have emotional issues, or they're going to try to extract money, but like that's not 99.999%. I mean, most of these folks, they don't want any part of this. It's just
that very point actually takes me to the next question that I wanted to ask Ali, and that is, there have been some confusion among the people who are trying to follow this about, is this the same person as Katie Johnson, who was, and clearly, and so that's a different, Katie Johnson was the person who was thinking of suing Donald Trump in 2016, and then
she actually did
right before the election. But she's got some very specific rape allegations against Donald Trump.
And she actually did file the lawsuit, right? It's just then she ended up.
So Katie Johnson filed a suit. I don't know if this is my non-legal mind of like what is a lawsuit versus what was like a criminal case. But the first case was filed in April of 2016, and then she withdrew, and she was under the name Katie Johnson, which is also a pseudonym. That's not her real name. She withdrew it because she didn't have a legal team. She made mistakes on her filing, and so they said, why don't you withdraw it and we'll refile. So she refiled as Jane Doe, and then they did that, I think, 3 times total. So they had one in April, they had one in June, and they had one in September, and all the while she kept gaining like legal representation, like from Lisa Bloom, for example, was one of her lawyers. So very credible legal teams. And then in the end, 4 days before the election, she was going to give a press conference. She was going to show her face. She was feeling confident enough to say who she was. And there was something that happened. There was some sort of a breach of the computer system or whatever was housing all the information for her case. It got hacked. And they were able to, I think they were able to connect it back. The hacker was out of Israel, and I think that freaked her out for whatever reason. And so she withdrew. When that hack happened, she was freaked out. She thought it was targeted, and she withdrew her case and then did not do the press conference. And that was like 4 days before the election. So she's a separate case, but I mean, it is significant to think that there are multiple instances in these cases of young teenagers, not just teenagers, but very young teenagers. Because a lot of times, you'll hear in these emails, these like snarky kind of banter that they think you should be able to consent at 16 years old, potentially if you're Alan Dershowitz, 15 years old, because that's what they do in other countries. So why shouldn't they do it in America? Well, that obviously I disagree with, but like, even so, these girls were 13, and Katie Johnson was from the mid 90s, but this other girl was from 1984. So that significantly earlier. Epstein was much younger. There's definitely a lot to look into.
I've even sort of had to say this, I've got 2 boys, and, we listen to rock and roll and this and that, and, songs will come up from the 80s and whatever, jailbait, and, like, what is it about? She's my 17 or whatever it is. And I, and I had to kind of put in the context of it is gross. It is wrong. It is, I can go on and on how disgusting it is. But the thing I think you need to understand about that time, a lot of that time was 17, 16, wrong. Again, I want to be very clear that I'm saying it is wrong, but that was sort of, kind of an acceptable, like 13 was never
very older men.
I'm sorry?
And that, but like super older men, like 20, 30 year age gaps.
I'm not saying it's disgusting. I'm just saying like all of it's gross, but I'm just saying there was never a moment that I'm aware of, maybe, Romeo and Juliet or something, but like where 13 was and 14 and whatever were acceptable, or even slightly societally acceptable, that I know of. And so, I mean, when you see those, it's to me, like, they're all horrific. And yet those are just, I mean, I don't know how to put how utterly.
I'm flashing back because I have some vague memories from the 1980s, 1990s of joking with some guy friends about what is the acceptable age difference in terms of dating somebody much younger. And I seem to remember some sort of cockamamie math thing that, well, you take your age, divide it in half, and add 7. And so if you're 20 years old, then it's okay to be dating a 17-year-old. If you're 22, it's an 18-year. But it was like but that was sort of like it was kind of laughed at back at the time.
Right. That's what I'm trying to talk about is the culture.
13-year-olds. Nobody was talking about 12 and 13.
Well, and I mean,
I'm trying to point out the culture, whether it was right. I don't mean it, but like it was wrong. But I'm saying in male locker rooms, like what you're saying, David, in rock songs and whatever, you'd hear that kind of stuff about 17 or 16. It was never acceptable that I'm aware of below that. And again, it doesn't mean I'm saying 16 and 17 are acceptable, especially with a 40-year-old guy. It's gross, right? But that's all I was getting.
So I'll say 2 things. I'm like of the mindset where, I mean, the laws are the laws. They are what they are. But I also think of myself even at 18, 19, 20 years old. Like, we are still children for a while. I think of Monica Lewinsky. I think of who I was at 21 years old. I get that it's legal, but when you have
But
a much older male grooming a much younger woman.
and the
out here.
power differential is what made
Yeah.
what Clinton did gross there. I
But
mean,
also, right. But in this case, and this is something I found really interesting that I didn't realize, is 32 states in the US have consent laws less than 18 years old. There's some are 16, some are 17. But the difference is with this case is you had to be consenting. And if you're not consenting, if you're not saying yes to this, then it's absolutely 18 years old. So if you have someone come in a state where the consent law is 16 years old and Jeffrey Epstein is abusing her, she's not consenting. So he is then abusing a child because she didn't give him permission. I would still question those laws if she was giving them permission, if she's a 16-year-old child. I have a 15-year-old child. Like there's no way humanly possible for an older male and a young teenage girl to be on equal footing and for it to be appropriate in my head. But none of these girls who are coming forward, who are over 1,000 women, were consenting. They were all non-consensual adults and children. And so it doesn't matter if they were 16, 17, and in certain states, they didn't consent, so they have to be 18.
Right. No, it's all, I mean, again, I want to be as clear as possible. Like, it is all repulsive. The sad thing is, and I'm really saying it more from a place of just the sad situation was that it, like David was saying, like jokes that were out there and things of that nature that to a lot of people, 17 and 16 and whatever was sort of like, back then. It never should have been, but it was. Whereas 13, 14, and 15 were even then already like gross. That's all I was trying to say.
Right. And I agree with that. And there's so many cases of like people who immediately started dating when the girl turned 18 and you go, that's probably like Woody Allen, like we started dating today. Like, probably not.
When you raise her as your daughter, there's sort of a bit of a problem with that too.
Probably not.
On your Substack, I think it was yesterday, the day before you were talking, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but you were talking about how you're working on this story that is very complicated and very difficult, but that you're getting a lot of support from other. Is this the South Carolina story you're talking about?
This is the South Carolina story. Yeah, I'm going to bed every night feeling like I've been on a treadmill for hours. Like it is stretching my brain to a point that, like, I wonder how journalists did it before the internet to this level. You know what I mean? Like even so, even though I am looking things up that are pre-internet, that are on microfiche or that are, newspaper clippings, they're all still on the internet for me to find in archival websites. Like this is such a minutia of information of where I have to look down and find somebody who's been married 4 times and all their different names and their kids. They have 3 kids, but all kids have last names that are different. And they've moved about 12 times in 3 years. Like how to find this and verify this. And look for little tidbits in the articles out of South Carolina, which have been incredibly helpful, but also in the FBI reports. Like if I see one single name and I can locate it to a place, then I can start to search for that person in that place at that time. But it also costs a lot of subscriptions because I'm like, I have subscriptions to like classmates.com and like all these different background checks. I'm like, I should probably keep track of all that stuff because I need to cancel.
You need to write that off on your taxes, first of all.
Right. But it's a lot.
David, like I saw David kind of smiling down there, and that maybe I'm picking you up wrong, but I feel like he might be thinking about what I was thinking about, which was when you talk about back in the old days, when I was in high school, the hell that was going to like the New York Public Library and getting on the microfiche to look stuff up. That, like thank God the internet like came about when I was in college, and I was like,
my parents were old school, so we had internet in high school, but we didn't have internet in high school. We had a Mac Classic, we had no landline, nothing. We had a wall phone. We didn't have cell phones. They had a record player. Like they were like 30 years behind and everything. And so my mom taught me how to do like citations from the Britannica and the World Book. And we'd go to the library and you'd do little citations at the end of your essays and things like that. So I learned all that. And I think that's helping me right now. But just the fact that it's all now compiled, as hard as it is to find, it's compiled in one place. I'm not going to the Library of Congress by hand and looking all these things up. But it's still incredibly difficult. And I just, again, the journalism that's coming out of the Post and Courier is just, it's blowing my mind. And I'm very impressed by what they're doing.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great story.
You had me flashing back to when I was and people aren't going to care, but back in the 90s, when I was covering the Whitewater investigation in Little Rock, and this was pre-internet, and a lot of it was court documents and going to the police station and looking at arrest records when people enter plea deals and looking at all the different statements. And sometimes you're enlisting help from people who might have been hired as a private eye by an attorney to go investigate something. And so it was a constant, hey, meet me for drinks. Let's talk about this. Who do you know that might know information about this? Oh, talk to this person. They were a neighbor with the McDougalls, and then talk to this person. And it's constantly trying to find people who have some tidbit of information that can sort of put you in the right direction.
I mean, imagine like Watergate, right? Like instead of meeting in a garage, it would have been like encrypted files sent back and forth, a lot less dramatic.
I will say that Watergate was my it was my 11th grade final project for my honors English class, so I know a little bit. But I think as you get deeper, and I think Substack makes this go like 100 miles an hour faster, but like as you get deeper into the journalism world, those doors open and you can ask those questions. And so like there was another story I was looking at today, and I reached out to 2 journalists and I was like, hey, you know somebody who knows somebody, can you go ask them a question for me? And people are willing to do that. Like they don't ghost you. But also on the other side of that, like part of this, I've been head down researching this story for full 48 hours. The people, again, that sort of like crowdsourcing idea of Substack have been like bringing me things, and some of it doesn't add up, but like a lot of it does, and I can line things up. And someone brought me an article today that was it was a police case of somebody that I had been trying to track down, and I was writing to this person's lawyer and they're not writing me back, and they go, hey, I found the article, which I had been searching for the article for 2 days and I couldn't find the article, and they found it and they sent it to me, and it's just such a great resoson.
Yeah, crowdsourcing. I mean, the ability to do that now is I think one of the best things about the internet.
It's pretty awesome. Yes, it is. Well, we've had you on now, I don't know, for 40 minutes, almost. David, do you want to?
No, the only thing I would say to Ellie, I mean, look, everyone can find Ellie on Blue Map Media, but Ellie, give everybody your information about Substack. How can they help you in this sleuthing, this remarkable work that you're doing?
So I am on Substack as a panicked writer. I just figured out my YouTube page, so I now have a YouTube page under the panicked writer as well.
All right.
And everywhere else, I know, look at me, I'm all techie. And everywhere else is under Red Pencil Script, which is my transcription business. I just have kept it the same because I don't want to bother changing it. And the way people can help is to just continue to listen and share information. Again, I don't have paywalls, but if people want to become paid subscribers, that's how I get to do this full time. And then otherwise, if you can't afford it, it's okay. I'm still here and you can still, read and listen. And
you can also buy her a coffee and other things that aren't as expensive.
How does that do other stuff? Work? I got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Hey, what?
How does the coffee thing work? I mean, what, people just buy you a coffee digitally?
Somebody showed me how to make a coffee button. Yeah, you just have a coffee site, and there's a little coffee button, and when you write an article, you can say in the middle, if you want to buy me a cup of coffee, you can put it here, and people are very generous.
They really are. We've done that, and I was just sort of overwhelmed. Like this is maybe 3 weeks ago, the first week we had it up, there's so many people who did that.
Because it also feels like, I think people maybe they worry a little bit about Substack becoming super corporate, and they're like, I could buy a coffee and help you just as much. That's probably a good idea. So I think
there's that too. But I want to make one key point before you leave.
Or a muffin? Can
you can use it for anything. You can use it. It's probably
it's money, man. It's currency, dude. Actually, it's Bitcoin. It can only be used on Trump's exchange.
No.
I want to actually make this announcement quickly before people do leave. And we'll be making this for the whole next week. But a week from today, it will be the 1-year anniversary of when I kicked off this Substack by being a lunatic and doing a 12-hour live stream, just because it seemed like an idea that might get people's attention. We kind of broke Substack. Thank you for helping out there, David. And the recording system crashed at like 86,000 views. We had on like Heather Cox Richardson and Mehdi Hassan and all these great people. Well, we're doing it again next Wednesday as the 1-year anniversary. Ellie, I just wanted to say before she left, and David are going to be on co-hosting at various times, hosting people.
Well, you buried the lead, Cliff. It's proof that you are still a lunatic.
That's a good point. I'm doing it again because I'm that much of a jerk. And it's going to go from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. March 18th. And just to throw out some folks, we've booked. We've got Steve Schmidt coming on. We've got Malcolm Nance coming on. We've got, I even was told by kind of your buddy, John Tester, that he's flying that day, but will be joining us at some point,
Awesome.
former senator. We got Joe Walsh. We got Brian Karam. We got Glenn Kirshner. We got Wajahat Ali. We got Chris Cluey, the record-breaking punter who stood up for gay rights and stood up to Trump, and they all tried to destroy him. We got Bill Corbett of MST3K, who was on last time. Funny as hell. So a little bit of celebrity mix in there, as well as, and there's a bunch of people. The only ones, some of the names I'm not saying are only because they haven't given a specific time. I can't believe I didn't say Miles Taylor too, because it's sort of a connection of what he did with State of the Swamp, which is the theme of this 1-year anniversary will very simply be, the midterms are happening. We are not letting the billionaire predators in Trump crush our midterms, end them, and turn us into an autocracy. So
And
all day.
nobody is doing more impressive work and is more of a journalism celebrity these days than Ellie Leonard.
Oh my God, no, it's not even close.
So, I mean, Ellie, the work you've been doing on the Epstein files and so much else is just remarkable. And we're, super excited for all the success that you've had and that you're having and all the amazing things that are still to come.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for being here, Ellie. And I somehow, we'll see you next Wednesday, but I somehow think we'll be having on this show a decent amount as you grow, and we need your help in figuring out how we can also grow.
And what most people don't realize is that we get to see Ellie off the air, right? We get to have phone calls periodically to talk about
real people in real life.
I'm like, we get to talk to Ellie all the time. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, also, you wouldn't believe she's totally different. She's very corporate. She wears a suit. Like, she has a pantsuit on.
I'm rude. I'm very rude.
Lots of makeup. Like, I mean, it's totally amazing how different.
Sounds right.
You know what? With Ellie,
I gotta go. I'm going to Mar-a-Lago. I have to go.
What's amazing about Ellie Leonard, and I will add to that David Schuster, is they are the very exact same human beings off camera as they are on. And as you can see what wonderful people they are on camera, I think you can do, what is it? The transitive property, whatever, and figure out that they are also wonderful human beings off camera. So, Ellie, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Ellie, thanks for doing this.
Bye. We'll talk to you later.
Yep.
Bye. So, Cliff, oil prices. It's the barrel of oil a couple days ago went up to like $120. Then the international agency for whatever it is that controls the global oil reserve supply said, "Oh, we're gonna dump 400 million barrels onto the market," which was like the largest in history. So that brought oil prices back down to, I don't know, something like $80. But now they're back up to 90 and climbing because Iran has started mining the Strait of Hormuz. And so all those cargo ships, 80 a day, that bring in like $250 million worth of oil every single day on each cargo ship, like 20% of the daily production is supposed to go by the Strait of Hormuz. And a couple of days ago, that just since the war started, that just stopped because Iran was shooting bombs and missiles and whatnot. And now, to make it worse, Iran is mining the Strait of Hormuz.
David, we lost you. Did anybody else lose?
There I am. So I hit that thing again. So to make matters worse, Iran decides that they're going to start mining the Strait of Hormuz. And Donald Trump responds by saying, "Oh, there are going to be consequences unlike anything we've ever seen in war." And
unlike anything we've ever seen. That's his favorite phrase that means nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Iran's like saying, "Hey, now the war's going to end when we want it to end," and what they're doing is causing a global economic catastrophe. I mean, anybody who's been to the gas station the last week has seen gas prices are up 75 cents. It's now close to $4
the city that's worst in the whole country is Cincinnati. I don't know why, but we had the highest, at least according to our news, a couple of days ago, we had the highest spike. I took a picture. I should have, it was in the low twos or something, and it now was like, what was it, $3.57 or 60? So I don't even remember.
I've been dying to ask you, Cliff, because of all your experience in politics and campaigns and whatnot. Let's put aside for a moment. We all hope that there's regime change in Iran, that the people can take over, that the war ends.
Of course, now that it's going the way it's going, now that this has happened, of course, we're hoping that decent people take over. Yes, right. Absolutely.
Let's put aside that. Politically, how does this cut now that I mean, the war is having, I think, some consequences that maybe the Trump administration hadn't, I don't know, been able to anticipate. And
Like
what
all of them?
the one thing that I think Trump had going for him was that the price of gasoline was below, in some states, below $2 a gallon, and gasoline prices had fallen over the last year. Now they're skyrocketing. What do Democrats do with this politically?
And didn't he just say he was like, oh, who cares? Was his response, I think, when they asked him about gas. What you do is, and again, it's going to be up, like, we need leadership to step forward on this. You know, their gas station, a lot of this gas was refined from crude oil that came in a couple weeks ago. So some of this is gouging that is going on, a good deal of it. So what would you do? I don't know if you put together an overall message about predator billionaires. You might go out there and say, hey, look, it's the monopolistic oil companies that are now ripping you off, the Donald Trump buddies that encouraged him to invade Venezuela. Like, there's a whole bunch of messages that you can make out of this, but you tie it into the billionaire. It's not, again, it's not rich versus poor. It's not millionaires versus the rest of us. It's all of us against a couple of oligarchs, like a few dozen oligarchs, and Donald Trump, these billionaire predators in tech, in private equity that destroy your company, who prey on women and whatever. And gas is just and oil is just a whole nother part of it. Right? Like the oil, I'm sure they bought it ahead of time, were prepared for where the oil prices were going to go, and bet on markets, and so that they ended up profiting. But everybody else who now has to pay, whatever, 50% more, 75% more, whatever it is at the pump, is screwed. I mean, and they also pulled all the subsidies from electric cars, because they're also assholes that way. So of course, like, they took away some of the incentives for people to do that. I'm glad I have a hybrid. So, I'm pumping up on electricity. Like I'm freaking, who's the superhero? I can't even, it doesn't matter. Point being, like, I think this is going to hurt them drastically. Just look, you're a regular person. Let's say you're a regular person who was a MAGA voter. You don't necessarily love Trump, but you liked his message. You thought he was going to America first. You see Venezuela and Iran now. Your groceries are all more expensive. They've cut a good chance from your Medicaid or your Medicare in these recent bills. Maybe SNAP from your kids, and you see these guys gorging on all of this. And what we need to get to is Pete fucking Hegseth's spending habits at the Pentagon, which we're going to go through in a second. While you may not be able to afford to eat, while you may not be able to afford to get your kids health care, child care. And again, this is no longer just people that are either impoverished or working class. This is the middle class. This is the upper middle class. Like,
well, and I remember, Cliff, you said that the way to sort of frame things with Donald Trump, and I think you said this a year ago, was it fits under three categories. There's criminal, there's cruel, and there's incompetent. And this feels like, I mean, gas prices skyrocketed because Trump doesn't expect or doesn't anticipate how Iran's going to fight back. To me, that falls under the incompetence, like the incompetence of managing a war. I mean, most Americans, I think, are not going to get into the intricacies of Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran funding proxy terrorist groups and how close they were to nuclear weapons. I think most Americans just can sort of trust that, okay, any administration that says we need to go to war, okay, maybe we do need to go to war. But Americans get when it comes with this such a severe financial cost.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. And it's the fact that the financial cost here, of course, a big part of it is that they didn't pay attention to anything. They didn't listen to anyone. Donald Trump, I mean, again, like, I just get so tired of when you see the same stuff over and over again, when people are like, oh, well, Donald Trump, I mean, well, like, let's see if he planned for that. No, because he never plans for, like, what does it take for people to understand that Donald Trump is who Donald Trump is? He doesn't ever plan for anything. He flies by the seat of his pants. He's a moron and says things when he doesn't know what he's talking about. He lies pathologically. He is cruel and harms people and enjoys it. I mean, there are things that when you see patterns over and over again. So, of course, let me see if I have the right document here. There it is. So this is my favorite. So in launching a huge bombing campaign on Iran, they apparently didn't plan for who takes over, interceptor shortages from sustained drone retaliation, how to defend U.S. bases in the region, threats to ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and how to evacuate Americans with airspace closed. There are a whole bunch of Americans we've in the past, whenever we're going to do something, the State Department lets them know ahead of time. We just didn't tell them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, good. I mean, like, look at this list of these are the basic things that a child, I mean, no, not a child, but like, you don't need to be at the experience level where you're president, where of course, again, Donald Trump had no experience and should be nowhere near that office. But look at this. I mean, they didn't do anything. They didn't prepare for anything.
And
they had no
takes
idea.
us to then the question about there's this watchdog group called Open the Books, and they have examined how the Pentagon and the U.S. military have been spending money over the last year. And the article that they just released about the Use It or Lose It September that the Pentagon had, where they spent like $93 billion.
$93.4 billion.
All kinds of crazy stuff. We're talking about ribeye steaks and king crab crab tails.
We have to, David, just for the offensiveness
tails.
of it, we have to go through. Do you mind if I say just quickly?
Oh, yeah,
15.1 million on ribeye steak, 6.9 million on lobster tail, 225.6 million on furniture. Those are some of the things that they list here.
And this article, this story comes out about this ridiculous spending comes as there's the Pentagon now asking the Trump administration, asking Congress for an extra $50 billion to cover the war against Iran. And Trump also saying that the Pentagon budget for the coming year, he wants the Pentagon budget to go from $1 trillion, which it is now, to $1.5 trillion. So an increase of 50%. So, and if you add in the 50 billion supplemental, the Trump administration is asking Congress to say, give the Pentagon $550 billion on top of what we're already giving them. And now we find out that the way the Pentagon spends this money when they're down to the last couple of weeks of a budgetary year is they just go crazy on furniture and steak and lobster tails. It's insane.
I'm going to put this in our chats here because people just need to see it. And you can, everybody respond. You can jump in. I love comments on what you think was the best of these. 124,000 on ice cream machines. $26,000 on sushi preparation tables, not sushi preparation, but the tables for them. And then what was the other? Hold on, it just disappeared. Oh, my favorite. This is my favorite. $139,224 on 272 orders of donuts.
And to be clear, I mean, look, some of this stuff.
Did all those orders go to Donald Trump of donuts?
Well,
or no?
Some people say, well, you know, what's wrong with the military having steak or having donuts or having ice cream? This is separate. I mean, there's already a budgetary item for the food at the Pentagon cafeteria or for the food that's being served to troops at military installations. This is separate from all of that. And I can tell you that some military installations already do have sushi, and some of them also have ice cream machines. This is on top of all.
No, that's what I mean. This is the extra people need to know. This is not fall under the regular Pentagon budget where they can spend on these things. This was, again, 93.4 whatever it was billion extra that he chose to spend, and these are the kinds of things that, you know, Captain Weekend Warrior, Captain McChug, you know, on the Fox Weekend anchor, they thought had the right stuff, both morally, intellectually, and every other way to run one of the largest organizations in the Pentagon in the world.
I got another example. Here's the one that jumped out to me. So somehow they granted to the Air Force Chief of Staff, I guess he's a piano player, and they decided at the Air Force Chief of Staff's home, he's got a military home on a base, he needed a grand piano. Okay.
As one does.
Grand piano? $98,000 for a grand piano. We're not talking about like most of the run-of-the-mill grand pianos. We're talking about one of the most expensive grand pianos you could possibly buy for a military base. I mean, for a guy's home, that's crazy. And give him a keyboard.
Let me ask you this, just an opinion. Obviously, we don't have proof or whatever. Do we think there's money laundering going on in here in some of these prices? I mean, because I suspect that some of these prices might be so high because maybe some of these prices weren't really that high, and there's money headed in other directions. That
again, separate from, like, you know, there's money already allocated for the military bands, right? If we need a new tuba or new snare drum and a military band, there's money allocated for that. On top of that, they decided, well, we're going to purchase a $24,000 violin for this person. We're going to get like a flute that's very rarely made in Japan.
Oh, that's right. They got the Japanese flute. I forgot about that. How much did that cost? Because, I mean, you know, like, it's hard to get a good Japanese flute these days, as I think everybody in the chat will agree. And so, you really have to look around. I don't see it. It's listed in the headline here, the Japanese flute, but I'm trying to see how much it actually
These are like
costs.
personal items that are being added just so they can spend money and they can, pay, give this to a gift or something to this admiral or this chief of staff, whatnot. And if any member of the armed forces, general on down, wanted to get a flute, I guarantee that there are places you can go. There are people you can talk to at the Pentagon and say, "Oh yeah, we've got all kinds of different flutes. We got all kinds of different warehouses. We got all kinds of different bands. What kind of flute are you looking for?" And they can find one. You don't have to go and buy a new $25,000 flute.
I was just saying the Japanese flute, and you were just about right. $21,750 for the Japanese flute. Oh, but also they needed a violin, and that was $26,000. In addition to the, as you said, Steinway and Sons grand piano for $98,329. Kind of the way all of us live. So think about for a second. You can't afford your gas bill. You can't afford your health care bill. They've cut your SNAP funding. You've lost your job, because of Trump's negative 92,000 job economy, and the rest of all of this. And this is why Donald Trump's approval rating is horrific, because at this point, he's losing his own people as well as the rest of us. And then, of course, they start talking about the draft. Good luck there. There's one thing that everybody can get together on. Left, right, whatever. You're not sending my kids over there.
Well, hey, Cliff, if they're willing to send me a $98,000 grand piano, I might consider having my kids consider being drafted. I'm just saying.
I think that's fair for 98 grand. I mean, David, you're people forget like the Bach-like qualities that you have when one puts a piano in front of you. So I think we have to, as long as you can play a couple good
well, and Cliff, what's so remarkable to me is also we're less than a year from the Department of Government Efficiency. Remember what Elon Musk was doing a year ago when he was slashing all sorts of government programs? Oh, we can't afford to pay USAID. We can't afford all these
600,000 people dead, by the way.
We're causing people to starve to death because Elon Musk and the Trump administration want to save money. And now here we are buying all kinds of this ridiculous stuff just so that they can say that, oh, we spent all the money that was allocated for us, so we're spending it on steak and ice cream and pianos and musical instruments we don't need. I mean, it's crazy.
No, I mean, they're the embodiment of corrupt authoritarianism, of fascist gangsters, which is essentially, there's people that are conservative, that have certain principles. The government shouldn't spend this or that. Tom Massey maybe comes to mind. There's some other people. I disagree with them on plenty of things, but they actually believe in that and hold to that themselves. And then there's this group of clowns, which is most of the Republican Party now, that they quite literally seem to purposely enjoy flaunting that the rules are only for the little people. And again, I promise you, as the old George Carlin saying, there's a club and you ain't in it. So if you may think, oh, I make $400,000 a year, I'm in the suburbs, but man, those childcare expenses, I can't afford them. I can't send my kid to this college because I can't afford it. The mortgage is getting on me. Healthcare is out of control. All this kind of stuff. Again, you may not be in the same dire straits as somebody who can't feed their kids, but you're not in their club. And once they're done taking the money from the people who are feeding their kids, guess where the only place they can go for it is next? You. Yeah. They're already doing it. They're making your stuff more expensive for their subsidies and their tax cuts and their regulation cuts. And then they come after you making $1.5 million to $3 million a year. You think you're all set. You think you're in the club. You're not in the club. Oligarchs.
They're surprised. How is it that Donald Trump supporters could turn against him? Well, maybe because Donald Trump said he was going to drain the swamp, and now he is the swamp. He and his people are literally the swamp creatures that everybody has been fearing for so long.
It is literally like they went down to the Amazon or something and scooped up with a giant, a huge tractor, as much swamp as they could, and dumped more of it right in the middle of Washington, D.C. I mean, it's just, again, it's comical. It would be comical if it weren't so painful to us. I know you have to leave in a second, David. I'll just say, the simple fact of the matter is that if corporate media did its job and put things in context and told people not, one bad thing Democrats do, one bad thing Republicans do, but the one bad thing that Democrats do for the every 475 bad things Republicans do, and I'm being generous there, and were honest about and gave people context and nuance. And if the Democratic Party leadership would hit hard on this stuff as part of a united message about what the billionaire predators are doing to us, then maybe we can, well, I'm not going to count on corporate media. Independent media will handle part of that now, but we need to, which is why, again, I will encourage people, blueamp.co. How we're able to do this at Blue Amp is with paid subscriptions. So if you please can go and consider one, that is a way.
And we are not going to use that money to buy. We're not going to use that money to buy sushi tables or ice cream makers. I promise you.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I was a fan of the donuts. Now, I don't think I need quite like 139,000 in donuts, but 86,000. I mean, is that okay?
Now we know why some of these troops are out of shape and why some of the federal agents are out of shape because of all those donuts that Hegseth is passing around.
I do want to know who is eating all of these. I mean, Trump's eating like half of them by the looks of him, but somebody else must be eating the rest. Who's doing it? I don't know. I'm glad that we got to laugh somewhat today, because obviously having this conversation with Ellie, that stuff is deadly serious stuff. I want to remind people again, next week today, but in a week, Wednesday the 18th, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. we will be, we need to give it a cool name, David, but we will be doing the anniversary marathon from what I did a year ago. As I told you, we've got everybody from David and Ellie to Brian Karam and Malcolm Nance and Steve Schmidt and Joe Walsh. And we got a whole lot of great people, Miles Taylor. And
it'll be a Substack Bamathon.
That's right. So please be here for that. And then tomorrow night, I'll be doing Tequila Talk with Joe Walsh at 6 p.m. Please tune in for that, because that's always fun. You were asking me, Lightning Lake, I think, are you on with Joe Walsh tonight? No, that's tomorrow night. So just so you know, that is Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern every week.
Wednesday, Thursday.
Yes. Are you making fun of me, or am I getting it wrong? Is it tonight? Have I lost my mind? No, I think it's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And a week from today is the marathon. And otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this fun-filled, exciting edition of Amped Up. Thank you, Ellie Leonard, for being here. Thank you, David Schuster, for being here. Thank you, Jim and Cynthia, for modding, as you always mod, and our regulars like Lefty Gramps and others who showed up. Thank you for being here. Well, look, he gets it even one last time because Jim is a pro. And Lawrence are helping produce and set all of this up.
Yep.
Do you have any last words of wisdom, David?
Nothing happens at Blue Amp Media without Lawrence Winterman.
That is, in fact, I think, important to state that Lawrence is the man behind the curtain, but he's not like the little dude in Wizard of Oz. He's a big, powerful man that kicks ass. I mean, Lawrence, he makes this happen. He is a great producer, as well as David being a great co-host. David, thank you. We're gonna
ice cream. Where's my ice cream? Where are my donuts? Where's my ribeye steak?
Dude, all I brought was your sushi and your grand piano. I can't carry that much crap.
Thanks, Jeff. Great show, everybody.
Hey, folks, as the sun sets slowly in the west, David and I both bid you a fond farewell.